And I was talking to a colleague of mine, and he said that 85 to 90% of the general population is struggling with this, and they don't even know it. Hello, and thank you for joining me on this week's Life Skills Academy topic at Monday Morning Cup of Joe. And we are talking about self-awareness, that 85 to 90% of the population is not self-aware. And this can cause a myriad of challenges in our relationships, whether it's at work or at home or with our friends. So it's so important for us to take a look at the blind spot that we have in our mirror. Look, self-awareness is the ability to recognize your thoughts, feelings, motivations, and behavior. And as a result, they can either enhance or become detrimental in all of your relationships. And the reason why this is, number one, general population is completely unaware that this even exists. And number two, it's a challenge to work on. In a TED Talk, Tasha Eurich made a very important observation. And it was that when we are introspective, when we're in our thoughts, we often ask the question, why? Why did I do that? Why am I feeling this way? Why? Which is a natural inclination. We all do that. We have this voice in our head. Hopefully it's our own, right? But we say or we do something, or we may even think negative thoughts. Well, heaven forbid we think negative thoughts, but we all do. We all have negative thoughts about other people. We have negative thoughts about ourselves. And it's very difficult. How do you change that? Because invariably these negative thoughts lead us to states of depression. And that's why this is so important, because we're not going to be our best self. We're not going to perform at our highest level. We're not going to create lasting relationships if we are filled with negative thoughts that cause us to become depressed. Because when we depress, what happens is that we become closed off. We're not open. Our creative thinking shuts down. So there's a lot to this. We ask the questions of like, why did I get fired? Or why did my partner leave me? Or why did I not feel loved? Why can't I be rich? All these questions go through our heads. All of us have had some variation of these questions. And when we say why, once again, we open ourselves up to depression. And in this era, if you will, of social media, we see other people with lifestyles and things that make us feel like we're less because we don't have that. The implication is, wow, I'm doing this. How come you're not? And that leaves a huge gap in our ability to connect with other people. We have to shed those things and look at ourselves on an even plane. Because somebody does certain things or they own certain things does not make them better than you or worse than you. It's a zero-sum game, level playing field. And that's what's important for us to remember. We need to focus more on what's in here and what do we need to feel fulfilled, and not be concerned of what other people are doing in their journey or their quest to become fulfilled. And oftentimes, as we all know, that with social media, we can airbrush things in, we can create, fake lives essentially. And that's not fulfilling. That's a very shallow, hollow, weak, ladder to stand on. So when we are asking this why question in our heads about different scenarios, externally, internally, there is a healthier alternative, and one that is common among many of the top self-aware individuals that were tested for their level of self-awareness. And that is, rather than asking the question, why, is to ask ourselves the question, what and how? What could I do differently next time to be the person I am aspiring to become? What could I do differently? How might I do something that will get me a better result? Because at the end of the day, it's about getting better results in our relationships. And what I mean by that is becoming an open and honest, trusting, supportive partner to our friends, to our spouse, to family members, to the external world. First, when we get into the area of self-awareness, and this is a challenging part. I'm not saying it's easy. All I'm saying is that it's worth it. And I'm still on my journey. But from where I started, I can see huge changes. And so I will continue on so that I can get better results. So, number one, remove the emotion. And that's really hard to do because that's the oldest part of our brain, our amygdala, which is responsible for very fundamental, you could almost say primal emotions, right? Happiness, sadness, depression, joy, all this range to say, I acknowledge what I'm feeling right now. I may not understand why I'm feeling it sometimes, right? You get this, emotion and you're like, or you should be. You should not react to emotions. We need to respond to emotions. What that means is to separate, put some distance between ourselves, right? The id, if you will, separate it from the emotion and be introspective from the standpoint of asking, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? Is it jealousy? Maybe somebody's gotten some luck and I'm like, how come I can't be lucky, right? Don't worry about it. That's natural. We all do that. You are not a bad person. It happens in everyone. So what we need to do is we need to name the emotion. Now, why would we do this? Well, the emotion in its most primal state comes from, our amygdala. But when we say, wow, why do I feel jealous? Let's say, why do I feel jealous about that? Somebody tells me something, they want to share their joy with me, but I feel jealous. The minute I can put a title to that emotion, what happens is that I move that energy from the amygdala into the prefrontal cortex, our critical thinking area of our brain. Then we can do something logically about it. But there is no logic in the amygdala. That whole limbic system is not based on logic. It's based on response, right? It's the primal fight or flight kind of reaction. And so we need to be able to be silent. This is what's helped me, is just stop. I'm feeling something. I'm feeling jealous. Why is that? I just feel that, I want to have that kind of joy. Why don't I have that kind of joy? Well, part of it is probably because my internal dialogue is not lending itself to feeling and experiencing joy. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard because that's a journey that I'm on along with you. I know that it's challenging. But first, we have to do the separation. We have to acknowledge the emotion, put it into the prefrontal cortex and say, what could I do or even think differently that would have me feel differently? I could say, wow, that's awesome. Congratulations on that new position. And believe that if that person's able to accomplish that, then I'm able to accomplish what I want in life, what fulfills me. See the mind shift there? But you have to put that that space. It reminds me of Man's Search for Meaning, written by Viktor Frankl, where he said between stimulus and response, there's a space where we are free to make a decision. But we have to make that pause and allow ourselves to think rather than react. And think about, wow, if they can accomplish that, I can accomplish it too. Completely different shift in thinking. It's simple, but never confuse simple with easy, right? It takes practice. So try to be inquisitive and objective about your emotions. Now, though it's tough, how can you be objective? Objective means, completely removed and viewing something where, you're kind of in the experience. When it comes to emotion, you're in the experience. And that's where I learned to pause. When I was in the experience, I was like, oh, I'm feeling something here. What's going on? What's going on? Why? And you can ask why. I'm not saying don't ask why, but don't start with why. I know it's kind of counterintuitive from my buddy Simon Sinek, but this is a different application, right? What am I feeling? And how might I feel differently? We spend so much time trying to justify why we feel a certain way, but we've got to look fundamentally at what is going to benefit us the most. Is that getting you anywhere? Is it getting you to a good place? Or is it just creating more and more frustration, stress, and anxiety for you? Because I'll tell you, all those emotions create lack of sleep, poor diet, lethargy, right? You just, I don't feel like doing anything. I'm depressed. It's a downward spiral. And we've got to back that up and say, wait a second, I'm not going there. What can I do differently to get me different results? I might even ask that person if they got a promotion, hey, what did you do? How did you, position yourself for that promotion? Maybe I can benefit from that knowledge. That's an idea. That's a whack on the side of the head, right? Now, once again, so you've got to kind of catch yourself in the emotion, titled it, bring it to the neocortex, and then ask those what and how questions versus you can dabble in why a little bit. Why am I feeling that way? That's a legitimate question. But catching yourself is the first big thing. Because so many people, when we talk about a non-level of self-awareness, is they don't even know to stop themselves. It doesn't even occur to them. The other thing is, if you're that person, I'm an introvert, so I'm kind of introspective by nature, but many of my friends are extroverts. I'm drawn to extroverts because they possess things that I don't. They just seem to be on it all the time. And I value that in them. But if you're an extrovert, you may have a bigger blind spot than an introvert. The best way to do or gain insight into your behavior and how your lack of self-awareness, hey, look, 85 to 90% of the population, if you're one of those, don't feel bad, because the remaining 10% is a pretty small crowd, is to ask friends, how do I show up for you? And ask difficult questions from the standpoint of, like, I dominate meetings a lot, don't I? Oh, yeah. You kind of just, do I roll over people? Am I kind of like a bull in a china shop? Has somebody given me that feedback? Look, feedback's important for us. It kind of gives us insight into our own behavior, especially when we're extroverts and we don't necessarily pay attention to those things. So we need that feedback. Now, bear in mind, feedback simply means that's one person's experience. Take it for what it's worth. If that's your spouse, probably ought to really pay attention to it. But if it's a colleague, maybe it doesn't carry as much weight. But then when you've got several colleagues, or even 2 or 3 that are telling you the same thing, then that's an indicator that maybe, hey, I need to step back and really kind of do a self-check in terms of how I'm showing up to people on my team, for people in my department, for people in my social circles. Look, if we become isolated by choice is one thing, but when people avoid us, if we are self-aware enough to even notice that, then we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention. Why? Because you know what? Relationships in life, we are social creatures as human beings. We are social creatures. And when we don't have that social connection, it can invariably lead to mental ill health over time. So that's why this is very important. The other thing is, stop the harsh self-judgment. You beat yourself up in your thoughts. Oftentimes, like, oh man, why did I say that? Oh, what a stupid mistake. I am such an idiot. How many of us have said that before? Look, I know how I have. And it's just not good dialogue. It does not put us in a direction that is going to have us reach our dreams, our fulfillment, our joy, and our happiness in life. So we've got to be able to look objectively at our emotions, ask what am I feeling? How can I change that? And not be so judgmental, rather than beat ourselves up, replace it with some self-compassion. Hey, look, Dave, everybody makes mistakes. Yeah, you're right. Or do you think you're the first person to ever make this mistake? Look, you can feel bad about it, but that's not going to fix the problem. It's that question of how. How can I behave differently to get better results next time? So first question, what? What am I feeling? And certainly you're going to ask, why am I feeling this way? And then what can I do differently? How can I be better in the future? How can I be that ideal self that I want to be, that I desire to be? Look, we all have flaws. We all have baggage. We all have these life experiences where we've drawn conclusions, and those conclusions can send us down and not uplift us, not bring us up. So that's very important. First, recognize the stopping point. Second, have that inquiry. Bring it into the frontal neocortex. Be critical thinking about it, but not be critical about yourself. So try to separate yourself from the emotion and ask those questions. And then be compassionate, understanding, be empathetic, be patient with yourself. Look, you got to live with yourself for the rest of your life, so you might as well. Then commit to a practice of continuous self-discovery. It almost happens naturally when you learn this process of, I'm feeling an emotion. What emotion am I feeling? Boom, into the neocortex. What's going on? Then you can ask, why do I think I am feeling this specific emotion? And how could I better respond to this emotion or the interaction that triggered me and have it provide me better results, right? How can it provide me better results? Because when we think differently, we feel differently. And when we feel differently, we behave differently. It's a chain reaction. So how did I get to where I am now? Now, bear in mind, I'm not, anywhere close to, excellence in this area. I'm working on it. I'm here with you. Okay. And one of the key tools that I've used that have helped me a lot is journaling. Now, many of you know me. Many of you are students in my classes and know that I'm a Franklin Covey trainer. And so I have the Franklin Covey planner. And in that, every day, opposite my appointment schedule and my to-do list is my journal. And so I journal these things. Major triggers, minor triggers, may not be that important. They may be, but but I need to get the big triggers out of the way first. So I'll just write it out. And it's interesting because when you go back and you start reading this stuff, you recognize whether you're continuing to do it or, hey, wow, that's kind of weird because I'm not experiencing that anymore. Is it magic from me writing it down? From writing it down that embeds it in my memory and now I'm more self-aware of it? Could possibly be. So I want you to think about that. Watch this video a few different times. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time. I know your time is valuable for watching these videos. Please do me a favor and subscribe and hit the like button if this has helped you at all. I have other videos at the end, but there is one thing that I want to share with you. Down at the bottom or in the description, I have a link to another Facebook channel. It's not mine. It's run by a very insightful lady, Bella Marie, and it's called Hiking Sedona Mindfulness, where she takes you on 15-minute journeys into being more mindful. It's almost like a 15-minute vacation. If you're all stressed up and filled with anxiety, I guarantee after watching a 15-minute segment of what she's got on her channel, you'll become way more relaxed, way more relaxed. So that's it. I'm going to reiterate, journaling helped me quite a bit. You might want to think about that. But if you feel that you've missed any of the tips that I've given you, please go through and rewatch the last 10, 15 minutes of this and start a practice and improve your own self-awareness and get better results in your relationships.